All
All
right,
right.
we're live. How you doing?
Good. How you been? So
Good.
what are you drinking? Tradition. You got to tell me what you're drinking.
Coffee. What you got?
Coffee, matcha.
Matcha. Awesome. I like that cup.
Thank you.
Um, I just uh, I just had to take my truck in to get a taillight fixed,
Uh,
and my wife doesn't like to wake up early, but she woke up and followed me there so I could leave the truck and then bring me back. And she has one of those new fancy cars that kind of drives itself. Have you been in one of those?
I have not. Is it a Tesla?
It's a Ionic 6.
Ionic 6. Okay. No, I have not. The closest thing I have is not in my car. I drive a Tiguan, but my mother's car, it actually is kind of annoying because if it thinks you're drifting off the road a little bit, it goes beep 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 and it takes
Hmm.
control of the wheel and puts you back on.
Yeah, I was very thrown off at first with that because my wife's car does that. But one thing that I thought I was going to stay completely away from, but I instantly accepted it, was on the freeway. You can put it in cruise control, tell it how fast you want to go, but then say that you just press a button that basically tells it it's going to stay within 3 cars lengths of the car in front of it. And so let's say the speed limit's 65. I want to go cruise control 70, and then I just let go. It drives itself. It stays within the lines on the road, and it
Mhm.
goes 70. And then as soon as it gets within 3 car lengths of the car in front of it, it'll slow down and match that car's speed. You don't have to touch anything. And then, so let's say that car is going 65, it'll slow down and go 65. And as soon as that car is out of the way, if it gets off the on an exit or if it speeds up, then the car will speed up until my car hits 70, and then it'll just stay 70, but it'll keep like matching the car in front of it within 3 cars lengths. And I was actually able to hands off the wheel, foot off anything, like turn and talk to my wife for like a couple minutes.
Oh,
Like yeah, I would glance over because I was scared, but it was completely in control.
nice. That's a landmark moment. It's like we're finally in the future.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I brought that up is my wife was asking like how long it'll be before you can like Bluetooth your car to, like, if you have to take a car into service, if you have your other car follow directly behind it. So
Mm.
basically pointing out she wouldn't have to wake up and go that I could have just had like how long until I can have that second car just follow me to the shop, drop one off, and then I hop in the other one.
That's a perfect idea. They just call it a hitchless trailer, you know,
Mm-hmm.
hitchless trailer. There'd have to be
Yeah.
like some kind of certain regulation, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. 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 It's the future is wild. It's kind of bums me out that like there'll be so many, like I'll see a lot of cool things in my good years, but once I hit like 80 or 90 and then there's other cool things, I'll be like, oh, I wish I was like in my 20s enjoying
Yeah.
this cool stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It'll be important for us to be as healthy as possible if we're gonna make it,
Yeah.
you
Yep,
know.
exactly. Segue into the topic. Healthy as possible. So yeah, we're going to talk about health. What what's going on with you for health?
Well, I was sort of woken up to possible health concerns when my liver function was not really perfect. There was some elevated numbers,
Hmm.
and then dove down a sort of research hole about what to do about it. I found out that about half of the people out there right now have fatty liver in the United
Yep.
States. Um, so I'm worried that I could have like a kind of either a very fatty liver or maybe I could have like what's the one that's not quite as bad as cirrhosis? Um, intermediate stage liver disease or something. So we
Mm.
haven't found out yet. I haven't had like the ultrasound to figure out what's going on. But either way,
Mm.
I dove down a sort of health based rabbit hole looking up all of these you know, um, symptoms of metabolic disease, and it all adds together what's been going on for years now, as far as like a permeable gut, or what they call leaky gut sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
leading to fatty liver, leading to high cholesterol because foreign foreign entities end up in your bloodstream and then get surrounded by calcium.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just so many issues having to do with the pancreas and the liver and all these interconnected issues that all stem from really diet, poor the standard American diet, the STAT diet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've now been the way I've handled my nutrition now is I've started off with a blank piece of paper, right? So it's not that I'm removing food, it's that okay, what if I can't eat anything? Now let me add in what I do allow
Mm-hmm.
myself to eat, you know. And it's been extremely an extremely restrictive diet if you think about it that way. Because, for example, fructose, which is in every fruit, that's why it's called fructose.
Mm-hmm.
Even natural whole fruit, all this sugar, all this fructose is handled by your liver, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not handled by any other organ, unlike other sugars like cane sugar. So what I've done is I've even removed the vast majority of fruits even from my diet, and I've kept
Mm-hmm.
only the most superfood fruits, like a couple berries, like some raspberries and some blueberries, of course. And
Gotcha.
that's just the beginning. Like I now have introduced all of these spices into my diet. I don't want to ramble too much,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but
that's
yeah,
fine.
I keep all of the most important spices on my counter that I use every single day, all the time. Garlic and turmeric and everything. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, and I only get pasture. By the way, I gave up on the whole flirting with veganism thing because the more research I do in there, no, I need pasture raised eggs, and I need small fatty fish like sardines. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, one of the best things to repair, because I know how much inflammation is going on in my body based on how my back feels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So eating beef, man, eating beef with greens, leafy greens, it makes me feel so much better, and that's important. But it has to be the expensive stuff. It has to be the organic, grass-fed, grass-finished beef. But I'll stop
Gotcha.
rambling and
Yeah, no, you're fine. There's a lot to go off of. The first thing I think I'll respond to is the vegan idea. Um, I, I wrestle with this all the time because I think it's so important that there's a word that describes um, a person that stands out from the norm, or at least from the norm of what's talked about, to declare that they view sentient animals as deserving some kind of moral consideration.
Mhm.
And vegans seem to vary so much to the point where half the vegans will call the other half of vegans not vegan, that there really needs to become a new word for it, because there's so many ways to break down the impossibility of fully like being vegan anyways, that it's a bummer that somebody like yourself that it was flirting with the idea of veganism, but because of health, not so much. But then that puts you outside of this category, because there might be somebody that says like, oh, I mean, humans are better than animals. It really doesn't matter. I care more about my taste pleasure than I care about animals. So if an animal suffers so I can enjoy taste, that's fine. For you to get lumped in that category is just such a silly idea in my mind, that vegans would go, okay, both of these people aren't cutting out animals, so I'm going to lump them together. I think there should be a word that should encompass people
I
that.
I think that honestly, there should be a word for people who have this weird conviction that we don't have any moral obligation whatsoever to animals. Because
Yeah.
that's the weird one. It's very intuitive and sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying yes. That's right. That's right.
Like it's very intuitive and natural to not if you're driving down the road. My father told me a story one time. He didn't know these guys that well. He's driving down the road and there's a dog sniffing on the side of the road, right? And the driver goes, "Watch this." And then as he drives by, he speeds up, turns the wheel over, nails the dog so hard that he definitely ended up dying. I don't know if the dog died immediately, but he looked in the rearview mirror and saw the dog spinning in the road and was laughing. There
Mm,
has to be a word for besides psychopath. I mean, the guy probably was a psychopath, but there has to be a word for people who do not extend what is very intuitively um, this idea that we should not abuse other animals that have an experience, because
Hmm.
the vast majority of normal people, you have to infect them with some sort of an ideology before they believe that they can treat animals however they want without any moral dimension to it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And it's kind of strange. And I think the idea of vegans focusing on vegan so much makes the conversation not get brought up enough so that we can figure out how many people fit in this category. Because I don't think many people would fall into that category. I think if you really talk to every single meat eater and break it down, you're going to find out two things. The majority of them, the only the only argument I can think of that makes any sense for eating animals in a moral way is health. And there's a range for how we can view that, but let's just say that I think it's safe to say that's a fair argument. That if you have horrible health, you're living a horrible life. That if your options are to keep having horrible health, die, or eat animals and have great health, that is a very good argument in my mind as far as arguments go. Now, the only other argument that's going to come up that makes somebody not fall into that psychopath slash non-human animal category is going to be people that admit that they're acting on their addictions, but that is not their moral opinion. I talk to so many people that will say, I eat animals. I was raised this way. I actually think it's wrong. I wish it was illegal to, so I didn't have to. And I would love to be vegan, but I just can't. I'm addicted to it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think those two categories, I think being addicted to something and doing it doesn't make you that psychopath, you know? I think if somebody has moral thoughts in their head and then something like the feeling of being addicted to heroin, which supposedly is one of the hardest things to kick. You can't kick it no matter how much you love your kids or your family, whatever, and you
Mm-hmm.
want to do better. Addictions are real. And so anyways, I think if you narrowed it down, there would be like less than 5%, but probably less than 1% of humans that would not care about the suffering of non-human animals when you factor out those two things I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would sort of round that off a little with is that you could have people who naturally have a lot of empathy toward animals. Peanut, I'm right here. Who naturally have a lot of empathy toward animals, but they are they are taught, perhaps from a religious perspective, that anthropomorphizing animals into being moral patients at all is a kind of decadence that happens when you allow yourself to be idle and to not care about those things which your God has told you are the things you should care about, and are the real moral considerations.
Gotcha.
Do you
Okay.
know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Mhm.
secular morality. It could be seen as secular morality, a care
Mhm.
for animals.
Yeah, and that comes into a strange like psychological element of how you're raised and the things that kind of get imprinted on your mind. Because anybody that grows up in a family where they value the people that brought them up
Mm.
will have ideas that aren't their own natural ideas, and yeah, so I think that is another section of it. So yes, I
Hmm.
think that's interesting. Um, but okay, so I'm gonna backtrack. There was a thing I talked so much that I forgot.
Well, I'm curious what your health situation has been like and how you've changed your diet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's see. Oh, well, one last thing I wanted to say on the vegan thing really quick is it seems to me that like when I talk to vegans, the majority of them will say if I was on an island, I needed to kill an animal, I would kill it to survive, but outside of that, I wouldn't. And I think the idea of dying and then in that case being up for killing something to survive, it's
Hmm.
it's there. And then the idea of like if you were to eat this animal that would give you the tiniest sliver of health that you wouldn't even notice, it wouldn't be
Mhm.
worth killing the animal for. And then you have the whole rest of the spectrum. And I think one of the problems is nobody really has a conversation on it enough to figure out how much health makes it worth it. And in my mind, I would just call it any noticeable health. If there's something unhealthy about yourself, and you could noticeably change by consuming animal products, that in my mind, for me personally, a person that's very empathetic towards animals, and as you know, I pick up every worm off the street just because I feel bad that they can't go through the cement. Um,
Mhm.
uh, any noticeable amount of health, I think, is reasonable to harm an animal. Not to harm the animal for, but to end its life. I haven't been convinced otherwise, and so I just wanted to point that out. That I think that's a thing that I wish vegans would talk more about, and non-vegans would talk more about. Okay, but as far as my health goes, I basically same thing as you. Um, uh, 4 months ago, maybe 4.5 months ago, I went in, got some blood work. Doctor told me like your LDL levels are really high, triglycerides are really high. It was a number where legally he had to set up an appointment for me with the cardiologist. Like the LDL was so bad that he like legally he had to do that, and so that was set up. And then I was told that by the time I'm 45, I will likely have a heart attack if I don't change drastically. And so I'm 38 now, so a little less than 6 years, or
Mhm.
less than 7 years from now. And so yeah, that freaked me out. It same thing as you, where it's fatty liver. I went and had the ultrasound. The ultrasound showed the fatty liver. So yeah, the numbers were bad, and I did what you did. I went out and researched. I read probably 5, 6 books on health from various different types of health experts, and then I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I kind of just searched around. Um, and and that's what I want to ask you, an element of what you did with that. Did you have a direction you went as far as research, or how you decided to accept information you found?
Um, you know what? I should. I wish I could remember the guy who I've been trusting the most. It was Dr. Berg or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Has a lot of
Eric, yeah.
online video. Yeah, I think he has a lot of online videos. Um, the other guy I've been listening to, and I think that the ladies at the health food store might think that I'm just going in there every day to pick up 2 or 3 things with Matthew because I want
Mm-hmm.
some attention from a woman or something because it's kind of suspicious the way I show up there every day to get 2 items. Because I
Mm-hmm.
do a little research and then go out and get those 2 items. Do a little research and
Yeah.
go out and get those 2 items. Hit peanut. Um, and let me pick him up real quick.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've been listening to Dr. Berg, if that's how I say his name, and then the other one is um, Bobby. What is it for shopping? It's
Oh, I know the guy. Yeah, yeah.
he has an app, but yeah,
He'll
he has
like
an
pick something up and he'll point out like red dye 40, and then he'll explain it.
yes.
And yeah, yeah, that guy's pretty fascinating. I
So
like that.
now I know not to purchase anything that says spices or says natural flavors or says any of that stuff.
I had researched natural flavors, and I that's what I've come to as well. But I didn't know that about spices. I figured spices was a way to not have to give their recipe away. So, what's the negative side of spices from what you found?
It's just that what could qualify as spices could be, any number of um, modified compounds that are legally there for flavoring. You know,
Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't realize that. Okay, I've always accepted spices, but okay, good to know.
yeah.
Okay, and yeah, I've listened to a bunch from Berg, and I respect a lot of Well, respect's a weird word. I have to catch myself and make sure I'm saying things accurately. Um, for the most part, even though it's a big topic of mine right now and I'm wanting to get better at it, I haven't ever fully read a study, like a health study, like go into the study, read the whole thing. But I
Mhm.
am learning the details of how it works, like what the abstract is, if it's a meta-analysis, how that works, and all the different ways to find out if it's published in a scientific journal and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I can't really say that I know for sure if any specific doctor or expert in other ways is accurate, but he is one that I've followed and many others. Let me tell you a thing I feel, and you can tell me your thoughts on it. I'm actually shocked that this is not more widely talked about, the thing I'm about to say. so okay, so I'm vegan. So most people that are something, what is it? Confirmation bias. They're looking for confirmation bias. So
Mhm.
vegans aren't going to go. Most vegans aren't going to listen to Dr. Berg because he's carnivore right now for the most part, but
Yeah.
also supports keto and that kind of thing. Anyway, so most people are going to have an idea of what they want to do, and they're going to follow that thing. And I have more interest in truth and what the right outcome is. And so I listen to stuff, read stuff on a bunch of vegan doctors. I look at stuff on keto, on paleo, on Mediterranean, uh, basic and whole food vegan, and all the different things. And one thing that I think is very fascinating is if you take all the most popular diets, like the ones that I just explained, I doubt there are many nutrition experts or anybody out there that wouldn't say that a good version of one of those ones I just listed aren't the best. Like somebody is on in one of those camps. And similar to what you said, where you start with a blank slate, instead of removing this and that and whatever, you start with a blank slate and start adding things in. I think what should be everyone's first go to is if you look at all those diets that I just listed and start with a blank slate and go, what does every single one of these agree on? Because if you even carnivore and
Eating
vegan,
clean.
yeah, right, exactly. Every single one of those, you have the drastic carnivore and vegan, and then all the other stuff in between. All of those will stay away from processed sugar.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Stay away from seed oils. Even though
Yeah.
that's a contentious topic, it's almost every single one will say something to the effect of anything that's ultra processed, white flours. And I just think that's such a great place to start because a lot of people, I think they throw their hands up and give up. And at
Mhm.
very least, go with all the things that all of these experts agree on. And so
Mhm.
I think that's kind of a cool approach to go, which is why I'll tell people like, okay, if you're going to eat meat, let's at least go with what these experts are saying. And so like for example, you said you're eating sardines. That's a good choice from my understanding because that's the least mercury in any fish are what's referred to as blue is it blue skinned fish I think is referred to, and it's a lot of the smaller ones. And so
Um,
same thing with meats. It's like beef or something. If somebody's eating for their health, then they're probably going to be eating grass fed, grass finished, organic, not pumped with. I believe the organic element would refer to it not being pumped with antibiotics. Um,
yeah. Organic has different context, but usually that means you won't have the antibiotics, the hormones, and then for vegetables, fruit and vegetables, it means they are not using the worst of the pesticides. They're still using some
yeah,
pesticides.
gotcha. But yeah, so anyways, that's I guess what I'm curious to hear your thoughts on within what I just said is just this idea that if somebody's unsure, That's probably a good approach they could do. If anything, any of those say to do, you do. So basically, somebody would all those combined sound to me like it's a mixture of healthy forms of animal products and then whole fruits, veggies, nuts, and seeds.
Yes, I do. I should jump to Dr. Berg's defense really quick. He has he has said that the carnivore diet can work as a treatment for people who have to heal their gut if fiber is like really causing inflammation because they've already destroyed their gut biome and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
he's a big fan of lots of leafy greens. All of the most talked about vegetables. Um, you know, he believes in eating whole lemons, right, including the rind. Obviously, organic and clean it. But yeah, blend up the entire lemon and drink down the entire lemon. He there are lots of non-carnivore options that he thinks are great. It's just there are some people who their gut is in a certain situation where to get relief, carnivore diet would be an option for them.
Yeah, and what my guess would be on why that works is basically like an elimination diet. It's whatever's causing the issues. If you bring it down to the only thing you're eating is meat, then that means you're not putting in the things that led to the issue. And again, like I'm no expert on any of this stuff. From my understanding, the bacteria in your gut. Good bacteria will feed on certain things. Bad bacteria will feed on certain things. And so something like processed sugar, you got bad bacteria that's feeding on it, which is really bad for your gut. And then having something that is referred to as prebiotics. Oftentimes people will point to like cabbage and some stuff like that, where it's a certain type of things that your good gut bacteria want to consume. And then probiotic would be something like fermented foods, where it'd be, well, cabbage is still a good example for that, where it'd be the fermented cabbage. Do you happen to know from what you've seen?
Well, if I could jump on, could you hold that question?
Yeah.
If I could jump on to the prebiotic, they call it prebiotic. It makes it seem like you should eat it first, but you want to eat take your probiotic pill like 20 minutes, a half hour first. Then you eat your prebiotics, right, which is the food for the probiotics. And what I do every single day with my last meal, I have 2 meals a day, and the last meal of the day, dinner, let's call it, I always eat cabbage. Well, not cabbage specifically. It's actually, sauerkraut, fermented cabbage, because it's just so much better for your gut to eat fermented foods, right? It's so much easier on your gut. But okay, go back to the question you were about to go to.
I was just curious if you had heard. So if you have prebiotics, probiotics, cabbage, or sauerkraut, like we're talking about, what are the? Well, you said Dr. Berg talked about carnivore. What are the thoughts of the meat being there without something for the bacteria? Does the gut bacteria thrive on meat, or is it the idea that you're trying to heal the leaky gut and then later you'll feed the bacteria?
Well, you kind of have to do all of it at the same time, because you want to. Well, maybe I'm out of my depth now, because right now my understanding is that at the same time you're healing your gut, right? Which really, there's enzymes in bone broth that'll help do that. So I have some bone broth, and I tend to eat that every day. But you're feeding your gut, like you said, with fiber, essentially, and you want to partially break that down with the fermented foods. And so you more and more you're eating the fiber and the fermented fiber. You're feeding the good bacteria, and you can't really. Everything I've seen suggests you can't really seed your gut with probiotics and then keep feeding it and expect it then to be okay like a garden. It's really more about your gut physically recovering, and then someday having a healthy ecosystem in there. It's not.
Yeah.
It's there's no way for you to just treat it like a garden where you seed it with the good stuff and keep feeding the good stuff. You have to do that anyway every day, but you can never stop. Is
Mm.
what I'm saying. You
Gotcha.
know,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the sugars, I don't know if they directly kill the good bacteria or if they effectively kill the good bacteria by crowding the good bacteria out with bad bacteria. But either way, the sugars do that. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe I could be wrong, but I believe there are no studies showing that probiotics, the like a pill of probiotics, have ever shown any positive outcomes specifically. So that'd be something that would be interesting to come across. I don't know if Dr. Berg recommends probiotic pills, but yeah.
Well, I know it absolutely has a noticeable effect, both like on the way my stomach feels and the
Mm.
way eventually my stool would come out if I take that pill on a regular basis. And
Oh,
it's got to be one that you get out of the fridge, right, with the actual live probiotics, and you got to take it every day. It's not like it said you can't just seed your gut with it and expect it to be fine.
yeah,
So.
yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested to find out for sure. I could be wrong. There actually might be some studies on it. But yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to think, break down. So, so yeah, what all are you currently consuming? Or better yet, what all specifically have you been convinced of aside from what you just told me? You mentioned the carnivore thing. Are you right now kind of mostly doing carnivore?
No, I probably eat less meat now because I eat so many fermented foods, so many leafy greens. Um, whereas like with a standard American diet, animal protein is at the center of every single meal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not that way for me anymore because sorry, I'm busy just giving my son some Tylenol.
Oh, you're fine.
But um yeah, I found I do it. I probably eat less meat now, and I'm not like I don't eat. The only thing I really eat that's meat every day are the sardines, unless you want to include eggs.
Gotcha.
And turkey.
So how long have you gone now staying away from processed food?
It's been a little over a month now.
Oh wow! And have you been pretty successful? Like have you had like once a week you fall off the wagon and eat one little thing, or have you gone a little over a month completely nothing with like processed sugar, flour, that kind of thing?
I did. I've never fallen off the wagon. I've had one cheat day so far. Hold on.
Mm.
So I had one intentional cheat day because part of the consequence is that I can't even go out to eat with my wife ever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a special day for her too. Open up. Oops, sorry about the. Come here.
Oh, you're fine.
It's there. You go. Yummy. It's kind of a special day for her too, because that way she can, go out to eat with me and spend time with me. So that day I had some tacos, some Mexican tacos, not like Taco Bell tacos. So some tacos you guys would be familiar with on the West Coast. So I
Gotcha.
had some tacos and I had a vanilla milkshake.
Gotcha.
The
How did it
vanilla
feel?
milkshake, I felt really guilty about that vanilla milkshake
Mm.
because that's a lot of sugar. But that's my one cheat day.
And that was in a month. So are you trying to set up like a one cheat day a month?
I'm still playing it by ear, but I think one cheat day a month until I have my next appointment where I see what's going on from like blood work and ultrasound.
Gotcha.
One cheat day a month sounds good to me.
Yeah, and that'll be cool if you can achieve it. My biggest concern with the idea of a cheat day is just with how addicted I feel to food. I
Mhm.
feel like the idea of putting that addictive thing in once you've kicked it,
Uh-huh.
um, it's always messed with me. Anytime I'll tell myself no cheat days, and then I'll convince myself to do one, or I'll tell myself, okay, I'll do cheat days, but then I'll just add an extra cheat day where it wasn't supposed to be, and that kind of thing. And everybody's different, and people have
Yeah.
different abilities. But I feel like in the same sense that like if somebody that used heroin or meth, if they became clean and then used once a month or once every 6 months, it wouldn't work like that. They would instantly be addicted again. I think that's how I am with processed food.
I think that's how I am too, and I think that might catch me one day, you know. But the thing is, because my diet is such where there's literally nowhere I can go to eat exactly the way I've been eating. Like I can't show up somewhere and get like, oh, I'd like, you know, a just a can of tuna, and oh, let me see, what do you make it with? Is it in sunflower oil? Oh, never mind, I can't have that tuna. Like
Yeah.
it, I have such an extremely restrictive diet that it'll never work. So I have to. I know that I have to be able to once in a while go out with my wife. That's very important to her. I've already
Mhm.
a couple times gone out with her and just sat there while she ate because she knew there was nothing, literally nothing on the menu that I could eat. Um, so, you know,
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the problem. I mean, it's part of the problem of our sad diet is that all the restaurants and fast food places and everything is going to be garbage.
Mhm.
You might be able to track down something that would fit, but it's going to be very rare and it's not going to be worth it. But yeah, I mean, I guess one thing you can do in the when the weather's nicer, so during summer and stuff, is go on a picnic or something, like make your own meals and then go enjoy that. But yeah, the sit down restaurant, I've basically just told myself I'm not going to restaurants anymore. I also refuse to go to parties that are at places with food. So if there's a kid party, like a niece or a nephew or something having a birthday, if it's at like a pizza place, I
Mhm.
just say like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to attend that. If it's at somebody's house and they have food, then
Mhm.
I'll go there because I can step away. But I don't want to put myself in that place of addiction for me.
Yeah. One thing that helps me, I think, the way I approach a cheat day is I don't approach a cheat day where that's my day, where that's suddenly a day that I'm allowed to like binge or gorge myself on things that I'm not supposed to eat. It's just my
Mm,
cheat day is a day that it's not the most insanely strict diet that's going to drive my wife crazy. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
So I'll still eat the sorts of things I should be eating. Like I had a we when we went out to get the tacos, I did give in and have that vanilla milkshake, but when we went out to get the tacos, I didn't have a soda with the tacos. I had a water. Just had
gotcha.
water with the tacos. And so and that's the way my cheat day feels. So it might not be that bad. Um, and it's not the bread from the tortilla. It was actually we went with flour tortilla. Is not as much as like a full bread sandwich. Um,
Mm.
so it'll spike your insulin a little bit, which will cause more cravings later. But I'm in such a habit of like eating at certain times, and that it's worked out pretty well.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha. Yeah, cool. Well, and I'm gonna bring it back to the vegan thing really quick, just because it popped into my mind. But I think I don't know what the right thing is. It's really hard to know because over time we're going to master this thing we call health. We're gonna more and more studies will happen. We'll have a better and better idea as time goes by of what's best for us. So keeping in the thought of if everybody only ate animal products for health alone,
Uh-huh.
and cut out all the deep fried chicken nuggets, all the different unhealthy hot dogs and such, I think we'd be in a way better place, a more moral world. People would eat a lot less meat, and then they would eat certain meat, so it wouldn't be the factory farms that we have now. And so, one thing that's kind of interesting to think about is, aside from the tacos that you had on the cheat day, for over a month, you've been vegan aside from health food,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
true.
kind of
Yeah.
cool.
And look at the only eggs I eat, right? Are eggs that are I don't eat eggs that are standard eggs. I don't eat eggs that are cage free. I don't eat eggs that are organic. The only eggs I eat are pasture raised, meaning these chickens are outside and they're eating their natural diet.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes the eggs you're consuming the healthiest version of eggs. No
Yeah.
matter what, no matter what somebody thinks on eggs, it's the healthiest version of eggs. And then also, it happens to work out that it's the most humane way to have chickens that are laying eggs. Yeah, did you learn about that from that channel you were talking about? Because I learned about that for the first time a few months ago. The pasture versus cage free, from that channel you were talking about, the guy going into the stores.
I oh from Bobby.
Yeah.
No, I did not learn that from Bobby. I learned it from, but although I did see that video too, where he pointed out the difference. I learned it originally, I think, from either Dr. Berg or one of the other channels I watched. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes another channel pops up and I pay attention to that one. But yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I want to send a few links your way of some interviews or some audiobooks to check out. There's Are you familiar with Dr. Robert Lustig?
No.
Okay. He wrote this book called Fat Chance that was pretty big about 10 years ago. I haven't read that one, but his newest book, Metabolical, is one of my favorite books on health that I've gone through in a while. And I want to send that one your way. He talks a lot about like processed sugar is kind of his main concern. And he he talks a lot about how whole fruit itself is mostly perfectly fine for us, just because the combination of the water content and the mostly the fiber counteracting the sugar and how that affects our body. So that could be an interesting different take to hear on fruits and whatnot.
Hmm.
Although I think the way you're doing it is probably the best approach as far as narrowing it down to the healthy fruits. Berries are almost always thought of as the healthiest fruits, and
Hmm.
then having a heavy focus on the healthy veggies. I try to get in 1 cup of berries every day and 2 cups of kale every day, and those are kind of two of my main go-tos that no matter what I eat, I have to get those in.
And do you make sure that because we're talking about leaves and we're talking about thin skin, so you always go for organic, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always look at the Dirty Dozen
Yeah.
list. Yeah, and so there's some things that don't matter as much, like avocado is on the clean 15, and
Hmm.
some things with like thicker rind if you're not going to eat the rind. But yeah, I try to go organic with everything, and yeah, just because I'm very skeptical about pesticides. I know in the past there have been pesticides that have led to many different cancers and deaths and different things.
Hmm.
And a lot of people tend to not worry about them until it's found out that there's the issue. And so I'll hear people defend pesticides now, but that makes me wonder if they would have defended the ones that we now know are dangerous and they're illegal to use from back when pesticides were started. So,
Yeah, I used to sell Roundup, you know, and it was like, oh yeah, Roundup's fine. You know, that was the most popular pesticide that everybody was using. And Roundup is responsible for all kinds of issues now. So
mhm.
yeah. Or
Yep.
imagine DDT or something like that, which they're still using in some countries, and then we import those vegetables. So
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Luckily, I grow a lot myself too. I mean, nowhere near what I eat,
Mhm.
but for a good 4 or 5 months out of the year, I grow a pretty good amount of food that I consume.
I think he's hungry. Sorry about the noise. Hey, buddy. Are you just
Oh, you're
bored?
fine.
I gave you some toys. Are you hungry? Oh, he's grabbing his ears. He's tired.
Oh, gotcha. Um, oh, biting his finger too. Is he teething as well?
Yeah, he's been teething, but I just gave him his shot. It won't take effect yet.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Well, not a
Um,
shot. I mean a syringe of
oh,
Tylenol.
I knew what you
Try
meant.
not
Yeah.
to overdo the Tylenol. This is his first dose today.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical with kids and Tylenol as well. My daughter will get like sharp leg pains at night, and so we'll give her Tylenol every once in a while. But yeah, well, okay. So one cool thing I want to do is I'm going to go through some studies, and maybe if you go through some studies and send them my way, I want to slowly perfect my list I'm making, because I'm doing something similar to you where I'm trying to do the research, make a list, adjust when necessary. Like I have no need to make anything fit my moral stance with veganism or to fit like foods that I like to eat or anything like that.
Okay.
I want to find out what's right and healthy or whatever. So and I think it's fun to do for others too, even if somebody's eating something that I'm not going to eat. Kind of like we were talking about with eggs. Like I don't have any interest in eggs, but it's fascinating to find out the difference of the health content of a pasture raised egg versus the health content of a factory farmed egg.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I wanna look into a few things. Are there any other details? Okay, so you're eating sardines and handful of different like grass finished beef. You're eating fermented foods. What are the majority of the fermented foods you're eating? Mostly sauerkraut.
Mostly sauerkraut. I experimented with a little kimchi, and I just decided that around here the kimchis were all too salty and too expensive, and you could get tons of really high quality sauerkraut. So I just switched to sauerkraut, and what I do is I load up that sauerkraut with um, instead of any salt, I use apple cider vinegar. Raw apple cider vinegar,
Hmm.
which has like a
Oh wait, you said you're making your own sauerkraut?
no,
Oh,
no,
okay.
but the meal that I prepare is the sauerkraut,
Hmm.
which my mother-in-law does make herself, um, combined with apple cider vinegar, um, single sourced cold pressed extra virgin olive oil,
Okay.
um, and then I don't add any salt, but I do add pepper and turmeric and garlic, um, and actually pepper and turmeric together enhances the power of turmeric quite a bit, right? It makes the turmeric more bioavailable.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah. So some people say it makes it too bioavailable, but I don't know. There doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be any negative side effects with turmeric. So I use a lot of that and a lot of garlic and you know
Hmm.
and so I make like a kind of salad or a kind of super healthy you know I don't know what to call it, but it's made
Yeah,
of
yeah.
it's made of sauerkraut. Yeah.
Yeah, so like more than 90% of what's on the plate is sauerkraut.
It's more like half of overall what I eat for dinner tends to be sauerkraut.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other
Gotcha.
half is whatever I'm eating that night. Like for example, last night it was I had carnitas, right, which I guess is not, it's not the beef, it's not perfect, but my wife bought a big thing of pork to make carnitas, so I was like, okay, I'll have that, and I'll just add I'll add an entire avocado to it, diced
Okay.
up, you know, and I'll add some of my extra virgin olive oil, make it as healthy as I can, and eat that as a bowl. And then my second course is the whole bowl of the sauerkraut.
Gotcha. Now, when you buy sauerkraut, do you buy sauerkraut that is in at the store, it's in the fridge, or just you put it
What
in the
what
fridge
what?
at, was it? Oh, that's awesome.
It's like I want to fall down the stairs.
Yeah, right. Can he stand up holding the bars?
He tends to stand up every once in a while. He stands up at the bottom of the stairs,
Mm,
trying to go up, and he stands up on us. Like if we're laying down, he'll walk up and then use our body to steady himself and stand up.
gotcha. But okay, so sauerkraut though, do you at the store, do you get it from the refrigerated section, or do you get the stuff from the middle of the aisle and then after you open it, you refrigerate it?
The sauerkraut.
Yeah.
The sauerkraut I get from three different locations. I get it from either my mother-in-law's house where she makes her own,
Mm.
or I get it from the Russian store where they make their own and it's completely unlabeled and I don't know exactly what's in it, but it seems to be just like mom's.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last place I get it is all the way at Wegmans in Syracuse, and they have near their like healthy area, they have a whole um, refrigerator full of different fermented foods. Like
Okay.
that's where they have like some half sour pickles and some kimchi, and I grabbed the sauerkraut. Yeah.
Okay. I've just heard, and I'm pretty sure this is true, that if you go in like an aisle that's not refrigerated, where there's like pickles and stuff like that, that are like jars that are sealed,
Uh-huh.
there's going to be a lot of sauerkraut there. And that sauerkraut is not retaining its probiotics. But the refrigerated sauerkraut does. So that's why I just figured I'd mention in case you didn't know that. But it sounds like all three places you go, it's refrigerated when you buy it.
Yes. Or there's
Gotcha.
also I forgot to mention Costco, and you've probably seen Bobby talk about that particular sauerkraut at Costco that he loves, and I get that one.
I didn't. I've actually seen an image that pops up all the time that I haven't watched with Bobby and Berg at Costco holding like fish, like a thing of salmon or something. But
Okay.
I haven't watched that yet. But no, I haven't seen that.
I've completely stayed away from wild salmon only because of the price. I'd rather just get sardines.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. With you mentioned the carnitas. So I know with the beef you specifically purchase grass finished. Do you look for a certain type of raising of pigs?
Um, no, only because I was not in charge of that, and that was just what she was making, and I didn't want to be too much trouble, so I ate it. But the all
Right.
the
Yeah.
other items that went into it were organic. Um, but the carnitas themselves were just it was standard pork from the store.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, and we slowly got to work towards, what's possible and what's doable, and it's it makes it really tough that the healthier versions of things are 10 times the price. I was mostly just curious. But yeah, okay, well, I got to hop off here pretty soon, like maybe in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Do
Sorry
you
if
want
it's
to
Matthew giving you a hard time.
Oh,
I'm
no, no,
letting him
no.
play with all
You're
this
fine.
stuff, but he's still whining.
No, I like seeing what he's up to. But do you want to talk about free will for a quick sec?
Oh yeah, if you'd like to. But
Because I think it can kind of tie into this a little bit, and we can also have a longer conversation on it in the future. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. I'll tell you my quick version of the first time I've thought of free will in a sense that we don't have it in a big way. And I was just thinking about how I love music. I listen to music, and anybody that listens to music, they cannot decide. They can't choose for themselves if they like it or not. The music is on. As soon as you hit play, the sounds in your ear, you either like it or you don't. There's no choosing it. And I think that can branch off to other things. But what are your thoughts on that? Or if there's no reason to say thoughts on that, what are your thoughts on what levels of free will we do or don't have?
when it came to free will, from the very beginning, determinism made sense to me, just because of the law of causality, right? That at bottom, anything that happens has to have a cause, right? So even when we talk about randomness, what we're really talking is about uncertainty, our own lack of knowledge, right? So if I throw a die, this is probably where I understand determinism the most. If there's an epiphany moment, it's this. If I throw a die onto a flat surface and that die rolls and tumbles and then lands on a certain number, if I were able to rewind time, right, and every atom in the universe is exactly where it was before, and I throw that die again, it's still going to land every time exactly where it goes 100% of the time, as long as we're not disturbing where some sort of physical influence is in the universe. That die is always going to land. Doesn't matter how many times you rewind time, always it will land on the same number, right? Because what we're really looking at is our uncertainty standing in for true randomness, which can't exist. And so if there's any epiphany that makes me realize that determinism is true, it's that kind of thought experiment.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. And okay,
Suppose
so
like free will, my rejection of free will stems from my embrace of determinism. I guess that's where I was headed.
gotcha, gotcha. And would you say that the reason it's worth trying to do certain things is because being a person that can try is like part of that trying is, I guess I'm just imagining like somebody, it's really hard because like, so let's say I wanted to learn a language like Japanese or something. If
Sorry.
I, oh, you're fine. If I imagine that that no matter what I try to do, I will either know Japanese or not know Japanese by the time I'm 50. I think a lot of people get to the point if they were to be convinced that there is no free will, they get this idea of giving up, which I don't think necessarily needs to go hand in hand with free will, but it's kind of this idea of does the way that work is the only person that truly would give up on something they want to do is somebody that wasn't meant to know it in the first place.
Well, for me personally, I do not. I don't. I don't feel that determinism in any way makes. Don't scream! I'm not putting you to sleep. Okay, there we go. I'm just reaching this crib for a binky. Um, so I do not feel that determinism means in any way that I feel less motivated to do anything. And every action I take still feels like it has impact on the world because my determinism is not like fatalism, right? So I don't have the sense at all that something is destined to happen, and therefore it doesn't matter what I do because whatever's going to happen is destiny. That's not how determinism feels it to me at all. So I don't struggle with the question at all. It's simply to me that whether or not I choose to do something to affect the world around me, whether or not I choose to affect the world around me, that is what's predetermined, right? So if I choose to affect the world around me, that has an impact. So in no way does determinism feel to me to be demotivational.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
Tina, look at Uncle Carson. Look at Uncle Carson. Say hello. He might be hungry. I think he's hungry. All right. So I'm going to leave him there. Hopefully he won't freak out too much while I'm making him food.
Yeah. What you making him?
I am just making him milk. That's where I go to when he's hungry.
Gotcha.
I gave him pineapple this morning, which his papa is allergic to. So I gave him pineapple and we watched him for a while and he had no reaction. So that's nice.
Oh, nice. Okay, determinism. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's pretty interesting because I try to think of how somebody can be affected by different things because I agree, like I don't know the best terminology for it, but I agree that there's not something within us that's making us be able to choose something over another thing that is making us anything more than this. I don't even know how to word it. But one thing that I think is interesting is getting new information you've never had. So if I have information, then whatever's making me choose one thing versus another, it's almost not something I can't control. It just happens to be who I am and what I choose out of what I know. But what I think is really fascinating is the idea of getting new information. So if you have an island full of 1,000 people that maybe they're lacking the ideas to even think of something that they've never thought of that would be an important life changing thing. Like for example, we talk about the Aztecs every once in a while. Aztecs sacrificing humans. Something within them led them to get to that point, but with the right amount of communication, they could easily be convinced that this is not the right thing to do. Especially if you convince them that their sun gods and their various different gods aren't real and that they were they've just been following their history. So anyways, it's just kind of interesting to think of that those individuals making those choices, we'll say the Aztec leaders or whatever, they are making their choices based on what they're currently thinking about. But if you just pulled them aside and said, here, sit down with some super intelligent people and they're going to have conversations with you. And maybe after you're done with these conversations and after you're shown some evidence of things, then they'll make different choices. But it's not because they necessarily have the free will to make the different choices. It's just that they were never shown those choices. And I just find that kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, there's a couple different broad ways in which I think that happens. One is we talk about in law what's called a mistake of fact, right? So you think someone's robbing a store, right? And you've already heard gunshots, so maybe they're shooting people. So then you see them and you shoot them, but actually it turns out that was just another person that tried to stop the robber, right? That's a mistake of fact. And so if you have, let's say, for example, the Inca, who think that they have to sacrifice all of these children so that the sun will rise, that's a mistake of fact. And they think they're doing something probably that's really difficult and terrible, but if they don't do it, something far worse will happen.
Oh, interesting.
So they're making a mistake of fact, and that's not really necessarily as clearly a moral mistake, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if you have, let's say, because human sacrifice tends to be tied up so much in like spirituality and magic, let's look at something more like slavery, right? Mm-hmm. So you have slavery, and in some sense, everyone who practices slavery understands that it's wrong, right? In the same way that our own society really understands that the way we treat animals is wrong. But they can get away with it because there's a moral norm that has not extended out far enough to think of other humans as part of your in-group. Or then even further, and what we're struggling now in modern society is to stretch that out so far that we're including other animals into moral consideration. Right. Mm. So there's sort of different things going on where there could be a mistake of fact that of people who want to be moral, and then a unsophisticated morality where the net of moral consideration is not wide enough.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, well, and another element that I think is interesting is like the raising of a child, because you could take any child, like for example, Matthew you have here. I have a feeling that you're going to raise him really well, and he's going to have a lot of ideas in the world when he's 20. But if somebody were to take Matthew right now and he was taken to some, I don't know, some family that does a lot of drugs and there's a lot of violence and criminal activity, and he's raised in an area where he doesn't learn maybe whatever the things were that you were going to teach him or whatever. So he'll grow up this certain way, and when he's 20, the exact same person, given certain like questions or opportunities, would make way different choices than the exact same person raised this other way. So I guess it's just kind of wild how raising someone can affect these choices. And I think part of that is because brain development and psychology in those years of being raised, and then the other part of it is just the knowledge you have gathered from the people you've interacted with while you were growing up.
Yeah. What's really interesting about the nature versus nurture thing is that, of course, it has to be both, right? We can't teach a rock to read. But
Yeah.
um, what seems to be interesting about that to me, there he goes. He's happy now that he's eating. Hello, Carson.
Hello.
Um, the interesting thing is that, like, how does that personality, people are more or less born with the personalities as they are, but then it maps onto the culture, right? I do think parents have a very important impact, especially not in what they're overtly trying to teach their kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in how their parents actually behave,
Mm-hmm.
and how they treat their parents is how they learn that people in the world are treated. Um,
Yeah.
but but more than parents, simply the totality of wider culture altogether, I think has a big impact on kids. And the very biggest impact is actually just how they're born, what they're going destined to be like.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it always makes me wonder when I hear Sam Harris talk about free will. I always want to ask him what he thinks of when it comes to like raising his children, because I know he has children. So like if his I think he has daughters, but if his daughter does some action and she's she's going to be in trouble because she did this bad thing, like what's going to happen if she said that she doesn't have free will? She wasn't able to choose anything different. She chose that thing. I guess his response would be that still the best way to make her learn from that would be getting a punishment that makes you learn from it or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think that, yeah, punishments are important. Punishments are important. I know that there might be something to the idea also that if you've had your own kid, your kid's going to be a lot like you, and so maybe you're going to use the right techniques to raise them. So I'm going to probably end up arguing with Matthew a lot, and I won't have a problem with that because that's just the way I am, and it's the way I learn. And I can't really understand anything if you can't argue down to the basic theory and understand why things are the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. 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 It's interesting stuff. Well, okay. So last question on free will. What element of like I think I follow your thoughts on how things are determined, like the outcome is going to be the outcome. But how much free will do you think one really has? So let's say I just gave you options for like tomorrow. Um, you can pick anywhere to go. And I'm just going to pay for a trip up to $1 million worth of 1 month's trip. And you can go wherever you want and do whatever you want to do. What do you think is going to be happening in Phil Boardman's brain that is making him, like how much of it is you versus there not being a you, deciding what that trip's going to be for a month?
I think what you might be describing in a way is the freedom that's granted by economic freedom, right? By having enough money to have options, or could even be a sense of agency, right? So when I think of free will, it's more like just the philosophical supposition that the philosophical position that I could have done differently than I did, right? Had we
Mm-hmm.
rewound time somehow. And I
Okay.
don't think we can.
Gotcha. Okay. But how would you describe who's making that choice? Like, so go ahead and tell me now, like where, let's say you had to choose in the next 30 seconds, where would that vacation be?
Oh, okay. That vacation would be probably at one of these places that I've seen on Instagram where they have the perfect blue water and all of these huts on stilts in the perfect blue Caribbean or Pacific water, and they
Mhm.
bring you like the most delicious looking crabs and lobsters you've ever seen, you know,
Gotcha. I
and
think that
watermelon.
Yeah, I think that's like Belize or Cozumel or something. Yeah, okay. So now if you were familiar with every possible location available to us, it's possible that could be a different choice you make. But considering the choices that you've seen, that seems the most appealing.
Mhm.
Um, I
But
guess I'm just.
when you say who's making this choice, in normal language, it's me making the choice, right?
Mhm.
So that's just a shortcut for us describing that all of the influences that have determined what the choice is I'm going to make, right? Leading me to make the choice. So I still get a choice, right? I can do whatever I want. It's just that what I choose is determined, right? Which sounds
Mhm.
kind of funny, right? What does that mean? How did you really actually choose if what you chose was predetermined? And the answer is that's just the nature of physical reality, that it was predetermined. It doesn't have to
Mm.
feel differently. Understanding that doesn't have to make it feel any differently.
Do you think it's different than choosing if you like a song? Because if a song plays, you don't get to do anything other than you can answer the question of, is this pleasing to you? Do you like it? Do you think choosing that blue water and the food that's brought to you is a similar thing, or do you think it's a good bit different?
There could be sort of what's really going on is just an issue of the limitations of language and the fact that we use words very slightly differently. So what you're saying is, could you so l- l- rather than it rather than the question being choosing to like a song versus choosing a vacation destination, let's try to unify it together in a single question. If I come to a T in the road where I have to go either left or right, I could choose left or right, but I can't choose which direction I instinctually think is correct, right? So,
Mm,
so me believing that left instinctually is the correct way. That's like my decision to like a song, right?
okay.
It doesn't really feel like a decision. But my literal physical decision to go one way or the other, that's more like my decision to choose a vacation destination.
Okay. Okay. I like that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Cool.
that's just a question of us using language in a way that's a little ambiguous,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
Gotcha, gotcha. Cool. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. I do gotta do a few things, and I have another talk coming up in about 15 minutes. But yeah, this is a great talk as always.
Absolutely. Who's the talk? What's going on?
It's somebody that I haven't talked to before. They go by a online name. He changed it recently. It used to be Contrarian something, and then now it's the Honest Doubter, I think is the name. And it is somebody that is well, similar topics to what we were talking about earlier, where he's 99.99% vegan and he eats a tablespoon of honey every day for health purposes. Um, and he's just yeah, he's an interesting person that has commented a lot throughout social media, and anyways, he's finally setting up a talk. I've been asking him to talk here and there for a while. Actually, if you go back through a handful of our live streams, he's commented questions
Yeah,
to both
Contrarian
me and you.
420. I just didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yep, that's the one.
Yep.
But yeah, anyway, so I'll find his voice will appear for the first time ever to anybody that doesn't know him personally here in about 15 minutes.
All right, perfect. I
And
look forward to it.
yeah, yeah, it should be a good one. All right, I'll talk to you later, Phil.
All right, brother. Bye.
All right, take care.